The morning was crisp, the kind that clung to the ground in silver mist before the sun had fully risen. A young red fox trotted silently along the edge of a thinned-out forest, her paws pressing into damp leaves and loose soil. She wasn't hunting, not yet. The day was still early, and the meadow ahead, usually teeming with voles and field mice, was quiet. Too quiet. She paused under a sparse pine, ears twitching toward the clearing ahead. Her nose lifted slightly. There was a scent in the air, faint but distinct. Not predator, not prey. It was earthy, wet, and metallic, almost like rusted iron mixed with fresh moss. It wasn't natural. Not to her. Normally, she would have stepped forward without a second thought, chasing scent trails or diving after movement. But this time, her instincts told her to stay still. The grass at the far end of the clearing didn't move with the breeze, because there was no breeze. The air had thickened, still and low, holding its breath like the forest around her. Birdsong had stopped minutes ago. No chirps, no wings flapping, no insect buzz. Even the crows, usually perched noisily along the tree line, were gone. She lowered her head again and took a careful step forward, placing one paw onto the edge of the meadow. The ground gave slightly, not sinking, but not solid either. It wasn't mud. It wasn't snow. It was something else. She froze again, golden eyes fixed on the motionless field. Something was changing beneath it, she could feel it in her claws. Behind her, unnoticed, 2 park rangers stood 100 meters away on a ridge, scanning the area through binoculars. One of them muttered, "Did you feel that?" But the other was already adjusting a ground sensor in his hand, watching it flicker. The fox didn't know they were there. She was too focused on what her body already understood before the science did. Nature had paused. Something was waiting. And she was the first to notice. The fox stayed low, her belly just above the earth as she crept forward one cautious step at a time. Her weight shifted slowly, measured, with each pawfall. But the second her front paw touched the soft grass near the middle edge of the meadow, she stopped again. There it was, movement. Not visual, not loud, but unmistakable underfoot. The ground didn't tremble like in an earthquake. It pulsed, gently, rhythmically. A low, steady expansion and contraction, like a breath just beneath the soil. It wasn't violent, but it wasn't still either. Almost as if the ground itself was hollow, alive, responding to something below. She sat back on her haunches and watched. 30 meters away, one of the rangers knelt beside a soil probe that was connected by wire to a small diagnostic tablet. The screen flickered with irregular pressure data. There was no seismic activity reported in the region, no recent rainfall to cause instability, and yet, the readings suggested minor internal movement below the topsoil. "Look," said the younger ranger, tapping the tablet. "There's a drop in resistance right where that fox is standing. Something's shifting." The senior ranger squinted toward the tree line. "No collapse?" he asked. "Not yet. But it's loose down there. Like water or air is pushing up from a cavity." The fox turned her head slightly, alert but not afraid. Her tail flicked once. She stepped backward, returning to firmer ground under the shadow of the trees. The air was still quiet. No wind. No birds. But the meadow. It seemed to breathe. A red squirrel darted out onto a branch overhead, stopped, and then scurried back as if it had thought twice. Even the insect life was thinning, less buzzing, fewer signs of usual meadow movement. Below the surface, centimeters beneath the roots, the cause remained hidden. It wasn't a sinkhole yet. Not a landslide. But something, pressure, erosion, or ancient structure, was changing the shape of the land in complete silence. The fox stood watch. The meadow had always seemed ordinary to the rangers, a flat stretch of tall grass and wildflowers, bordered by pine and alder, occasionally soggy after rain but nothing unusual. Yet today, something was off. While the fox retreated into the brush and settled in the shadows, still watching, the 2 rangers walked slowly toward the clearing. Their boots pressed carefully into the moss and uneven soil. "I don't like the pattern in the data," the older one muttered, tapping the side of the handheld sensor. "See this? Subsurface pressure wave, slow moving, about 20 centimeters below the surface. It shouldn't be there." They approached a slight dip in the field, barely noticeable to the eye, but softer underfoot. The younger ranger crouched and pressed his hand into the ground. "It's warm." "Warm?" the older man echoed. "Yeah. Not hot, but warmer than ambient. And dry, which is weird for this part of the meadow." They marked the spot with a neon flag. A few meters away, the fox rose to her feet, watching them silently from a shaded ridge. The same strange scent she'd picked up earlier, it was stronger now. A mineral-heavy odor she didn't recognize. Not danger, but not normal either. Then, the younger ranger knocked on the ground gently with the flat of his palm. A dull thud came back, hollow sounding, like knocking on packed earth above a void. He looked up. "You hear that?" The senior ranger nodded, then crouched beside him and did the same. Another hollow thump, this time followed by a soft crackle, like shifting gravel or loose rock below. "I want a drone scan of this section," the senior ranger said. "Thermal, multispectral, full sweep. And notify the geology unit. This isn't just soft ground. It's moving. Slowly." As the two men marked off a perimeter and retreated to radio range, the fox stepped back into the trees, satisfied for now. Her instincts had been right. But neither she nor the rangers could yet see what was slowly forming under the crust, a change in the shape of the land, building pressure from beneath. Silent. Invisible. But not for long. By noon, the sun had cleared the treetops, casting long light across the field, drying the last dew from the grass. A compact surveillance drone buzzed into the sky above the meadow, its rotors cutting clean lines through the still air. The rangers stood below, eyes locked on their handheld monitor as the machine climbed and tilted forward, scanning slowly across the marked area. "Thermal coming online," said the younger ranger. The screen blinked once, then overlaid color, blues and greens for cold surface areas, yellows and faint oranges beneath. Most of the field glowed cool and even, except for the area where the fox had paused earlier. "There," the older ranger said, pointing. "That heat signature shouldn't exist. Not with no sun exposure, no geothermal vent, no decomposing mass. Nothing natural." The drone hovered, then pivoted to multispectral imaging. The grasses near the flag zone looked normal, until the scan penetrated below the root level. There, a shadow stretched across the subsoil. Roughly elliptical, uneven, and faintly sagging inward. "A void?" the younger ranger asked. "Or an air pocket under the compacted layers. Could be caused by erosion, or a collapse in old sediment." The older ranger frowned, zooming in. "No. Look at the shape. That's not natural sloping. It's angular. Like a fracture plane." Meanwhile, the fox had not left the tree line. She paced slowly along the ridge, her nose lowered, catching hints of movement from windless grass. Her body stayed low, tail level. Though her kind did not understand technology or geology, she understood change. Instability. Instinct had brought her to the edge and stopped her from crossing. Back in the field, the drone captured one more anomaly, a slight shimmer of movement. Not at the surface, below it. A thin horizontal plane of air, flickering faintly between soil layers, like an underground blister of pressure. Then, suddenly, the live feed jittered. The drone didn't crash. It simply lost signal for a second, the camera flickered, and the telemetry froze. "Was that interference?" the younger ranger asked. "Maybe, or a magnetic pulse. Could be gas buildup," said the older man, visibly tense now. He keyed in a command and brought the drone back in an arc, avoiding the signal drop zone. They would need more instruments. Seismic, gas, even structural analysis. "Pack it up. We're not stepping closer until we know what's under there." In the distance, the fox had already turned and disappeared into the woods. The meadow held still again, but underneath, the quiet shift continued. The land wasn't finished moving. By early evening, the field was under light cloud cover. Shadows from the pines stretched long across the clearing. The rangers had returned with backup, 2 geology technicians from the regional park office, carrying portable seismic sensors, gas detectors, and ground-penetrating radar equipment. What had started as a curious anomaly was now being treated like a potential subsurface hazard. "Don't step beyond the flagged markers," the senior ranger warned as the group approached the soft depression. One of the technicians, a woman in her 40s with experience mapping karst formations, crouched and pressed a seismic spike into the soil. She glanced at the live reading. "What is it?" the younger ranger asked. She adjusted the readout. "Shallow voids, like we guessed. But what's strange is how regular the cavity edges are. They're not jagged. It's like someone carved a bowl under the ground and left it to settle." The other technician swept the surface with a ground-penetrating radar sled. As he passed over the flag zone, the screen lit up. A large, oblong hollow, roughly 3 meters across, sat less than half a meter beneath the surface. The cavity didn't match sinkhole profiles. It wasn't caused by erosion or water wash. It was trapped. Stable for now, but thinning. Pressure's building, he said. There's minor gas activity too, mostly CO2 and methane traces. Something's breaking down there. Back at the tree line, the fox reappeared. She was not alone now. Two smaller figures appeared behind her, juveniles perhaps, nervous and unsure. The adult fox stayed at the boundary, ears twitching at the unusual scents and distant human sounds. She didn't advance. The older technician set down a shallow core drill and extracted a vertical soil sample. As he opened the tube, he stopped mid-motion. The bottom layer, about 30 centimeters down, was charred. Fire layer? He muttered. The senior ranger looked over his shoulder. Wildfire? Not recent. This is old. Decades. Maybe longer. And look here. He pointed at a fine, glassy dust mixed with the charcoal. Silica fusion. High heat. Not surface fire. Something burned or compressed from below, then sealed. Everyone fell quiet. Could it have been buried material? Industrial? One ranger asked. In the middle of a protected meadow? The geologist shook his head. Unless someone dumped something here a long time ago and nature covered it. The younger ranger stepped back instinctively. Is this dangerous? Not yet. But it's unstable. The fox and her kits remained at the forest's edge. She sat down again, her posture calm but alert. Watching. Waiting. Something old was waking under the meadow. Not mystical, just geological. But not ordinary either. Layers remember everything: heat, pressure, collapse. Time doesn't heal the earth. It only buries its warnings. By the following morning, a cordon had been placed around the meadow. Survey tape flapped lightly in the breeze, while the once quiet field now carried the low hum of scientific equipment and radio chatter. Local authorities had been informed. A minor landslip or gas leak could be managed, but this wasn't either. It was deeper, stranger. Too slow for disaster, too unstable for comfort. The team had installed 4 seismic nodes in a grid pattern. Data streamed into a tablet, where colored lines traced microvibrations. No major tremors. But every few hours, a shallow blip appeared, not strong enough to register as danger, but rhythmic enough to be noted. Pulses are increasing in frequency, one technician said. Small, shallow, repeating. The senior ranger nodded grimly. Like the land is breathing. He didn't mean it poetically. Pressure from within the subsoil layers was creating micromovements, the kind that often preceded surface deformation or sudden sink formation. Meanwhile, ground-penetrating radar had produced more detail. The underground cavity was deeper than first measured. Beneath the oval hollow sat a second chamber, more narrow, sloped, possibly artificial. It was unclear whether it was the result of natural gas expansion or the collapsed remains of a buried structure. Either way, the soil layers had been disturbed decades earlier. Whatever was happening now had been in motion long before any of them arrived. At the forest edge, the fox remained a silent observer. The younger ranger had begun to take notes on her behavior, almost unintentionally. Every time she rose and moved, subtle vibrations followed in the ground readings. It could have been coincidence, or it could mean she sensed something they didn't. Later that afternoon, as they drilled another shallow borehole, the drill tip encountered resistance, then abruptly broke through a softer layer. There was a hiss. Faint, but audible. The team froze. Gas? One asked, stepping back. The technician moved slowly, holding a sensor wand over the borehole. Low oxygen. CO2 rising. Very dry pocket. Could be from decomposition. The ranger looked at the handheld display. Pressure's rising now. Within seconds, the soft ground near the borehole sagged. It didn't collapse, not yet, but the surface dimpled downward slightly, as if something underneath had just shifted to make room. Seal it. Came the call. And they did, plugging the borehole with a neutral foam compound designed for temporary containment. The field settled again. For now. Back under the pines, the fox was gone. By dusk, the atmosphere had shifted. The field was quieter, not because the activity stopped, but because everyone had become more cautious. Movement slowed. Conversations dropped to murmurs. It was as if the land itself demanded silence. The senior ranger stood with the technician team as the latest scan results came in. The second chamber, the deeper one, had shifted again. Slight deformation. Enough to raise concern. The cavity wasn't just collapsing, It was expanding in unpredictable directions, most likely due to internal erosion or gradual slumping of overburdened soil. Still no gas spikes, said the lead geologist. But pressure differentials are forming between layers. Something's pulling downward. They agreed on a silent evacuation perimeter. No need to cause alarm to the public yet, but the area had to remain clear overnight. Patrols would monitor the zone remotely. Just as they began to pull back equipment, the younger ranger called out. "Hey, look." She pointed toward the far end of the field. The fox had returned. Alone again. But this time, she was moving, not toward the meadow's center, but around its perimeter. Her steps were deliberate, forming a wide, slow arc along the soft fringe of earth where the grass met the pine roots. Every few meters, she would pause. Sniff. Look. Then move again. The ranger took out a field notebook and began sketching the arc. "Why is she circling it?" someone asked. "Because she's avoiding the center," the older ranger said flatly. The fox stopped on a slight rise, the only firm, untouched patch in the meadow, and sat. She didn't glance back at the humans this time. She stared forward, into the heart of the field. That's when it happened. A soundless ripple, not visible, but felt. A pressure shift underfoot. Then, in a single smooth movement, a long, narrow crack opened through the soil like a seam unzipping. No roar. No explosion. Just earth adjusting itself. Like it had been waiting. The central dip in the meadow sagged several centimeters all at once. Not a sinkhole, not yet, but the first clear warning. Everyone froze. In the distance, the fox stood and walked away,